Hey everybody, it's Eric Dorward with the Spartan Rocketry Club here, and we are going to continue our build of the Estes Low Boom SST. And in this one, we should be finishing up these motor engine pod decorations. This one I finished. This one, the only thing I really need to do is to trim up the paper edges because I want them to be flush with the wood. This side is really not that bad. The overhang is pretty minimal. But in either case, you'd think that we just try to like cut down like this. And the problem with that is, for whatever reason, the paper tends to tear if you do that. So what I ended up doing is just kind of like sliding the blade like this as if I'm whittling. Now the risk here is that I'm going to remove some of the wood as well. But honestly, I'm not really too concerned about that. Because the wood is going to resist more than the paper for one thing. But also, if I kind of round the edge of this pod, that's not really a bad thing. In fact, it's probably going to be more aerodynamic should it be a little bit rounded. So I'm just going to kind of like whittle my way. And there really wasn't much overhang on this side. Same deal with over here. It's just a wee bit more on this side. And the other thing too is there's glue in there, and the glue is harder than the wood. So I think that's probably part of the reason why it's difficult to just try to like punch through, to carve like this instead of kind of whittle things off. Because the glue doesn't really want to cooperate. Like I said, I'm probably nicking the wood a little bit here. In fact, I'm quite sure I am. But it's not really that big of a deal. There we go. All right, so I've made a little bit of a mess here. That's fine. I'm not going to obviously do this whole thing, but once we're done here, I'm just going to sand the whole thing. And you can actually sand the paper as well, just to make sure that the cuts are relatively clean. That's pretty good. Now, the other side has a bit more overhang, but the part, at least on this one when I did it, that was most difficult was the overhang that goes kind of like over the edge here. And there's more of it for one thing, but it was also harder to get into. So again, I'm going to try kind of like whittling it. Like so. Do yourself a favor and cut away from yourself when you're doing this. Don't cut toward yourself. That's always questionable knife technique if you're cutting towards yourself. So don't do that. This isn't really that bad for some reason. Either I cut this piece of cardstock more accurately, or maybe less accurately. Maybe I cut a bit more inside the lines. I don't know. But there's less overhang on these. This edge is pretty far off, but again, it's not that much. And the thing you just don't really want to do is you don't want to tear the paper. And that's one of the things that happens if you try to just like cut through it. I've noticed it tends to tear rather than cut. And I think the glue doesn't really help with that matter either. So this is just about down to where the wood is. And see, I ended up doing a little bit of tearing rather than cutting there. I'm going to try to clean that up. A sharp knife blade will help with this, but it won't undo it all because, well, it's paper. That's one of the things it does. All right, so I'm going to trim the rest of that up later. You don't need to watch that. But what I do need to do to finish the construction here is we've got these last little bits of wood, and they are going to, well, not that way. They're going to reinforce this joint right here. So Yeah, we need it to lay flush, which it doesn't really seem to want to do, which is interesting. So I'm going to kind of push down here and make sure this is actually fully set down where it ought to be. Because if this is sticking up at all, it's not going to sit next to the rocket body properly, or to the wing. I believe this is going to be attached to the wing. And I'm really confident that's the right side. Yeah, so it looks like there might be a little excess glue down there, or who knows what. But I suspect that I'm going to have to trim this after gluing it too. Alright, well, either way, let's actually do this one. Check this one as well. This one is pretty much the same deal. It fits reasonably well, but it's not perfect. Well, that's okay. We're gonna have to put my glue on this side. Actually, I'm gonna have a clogged nozzle. Deal with that first. There we go. So yeah, this is just, I don't know. It's not really gonna strengthen anything. It's just gonna make the connection where this is gonna attach to the fin wider. So I mean, I suppose ultimately it will strengthen things, but by itself, it's not really going to do much. All right, so down it goes. And I'm pushing it down as far as I can get. Just looking at it, it looks like it's going to overhang. Not by much, but by a little bit down here. So, well, we'll see what it looks like on the other side. I might need to trim that. I might not. We'll see. Again, since these pieces are not symmetrical, oops, that's no good. Put more glue on. Anyway, since they're not symmetrical, make sure that you are putting the glue on the correct side. Basically, you need a left and a right for each of these. And if you accidentally put the glue on the wrong side for the first one, yeah, just go ahead and apply it to the other engine. But that's not going to help you very much if you do it wrong. If you do it backwards on the second one, that would be a bit of a problem. Ultimately, I mean, it's not that big a deal. You'll just have to scrape the glue off or wipe it as clean as you can, and then apply the glue to the other side. All right. Trying to make sure that these are down as far as they'll go and that they are flush up against the core of this. I do want to seem to creep a little bit. I'm going to just hold them down for a little bit. Squeeze in and down. All right, that's probably pretty good. Well, the two pieces that I attached at least seem to be in line with each other. The front is great. The middle is a little uneven. In the back, this side seems to be higher than this side. So I might have to trim like right here, just to take a little bit of wood off. Sanding would be very difficult in between here, but here I could probably pull that off. So we'll give that a go. You don't need to watch me do this as well. So that's basically it for the pods. The pods are going to fit into the fins. So logically, the fins should probably be the next thing that we work on. So the fins, I've already extracted the big ones right here. But these are so big, they don't fit in one sheet of balsa. So these are ones that we're going to have to construct. So I've already sanded this sheet. I just need to extract it now. So these fins, oops, I missed a spot. The fins are going to be 3 pieces that we're going to have to glue together. You'll notice we've got these holes in them. That's where the engine pod is going to go. Fortunately, this balsa is a whole lot thicker than the stuff we were working with earlier. I'm only going to cut one of these fins out, so you can watch me make two. These two fins should be interchangeable. Just flip them over. And the final fin is going to look like this. This is obviously very long. So hopefully you have a ruler, a nice big ruler to work with. If you only have a foot-long ruler, well, that's going to be kind of problematic because there's a foot. That's not quite enough. It also is worth mentioning too that the ruler itself is not going to be super useful here because this is not, well, I mean it's curved. That's really the problem because it's going to be, well, it's not curved exactly, it's angled. It's going to be angled so that it fits onto the rocket body, which is going to taper near the end. So yeah, I can't line it up like this. So that's going to be a little bit more difficult. This part, at least, I can line up. Regardless, I should get my piece of wax paper because I don't want to be gluing anything directly to my cutting board. That would be unfortunate. So let's do the little part first, at least. Now, I have not rounded the fins yet because the fins, all this is going to be a uniform piece. So I don't want to do it ahead of time because I might end up like misrounding it so that the interface doesn't look any good. And I need to do it, I need to do this eventually anyway, so there's not really any benefit to doing it piecemeal and then putting it together. The only real benefit, I guess, is that it might be a little bit easier to work with, but probably not very much. All right, I am going to do the two level layers, that's the right word, 2 layers of glue on this. Not because this is a tough joint to build, but it's just kind of time consuming. And I would like this joint to be extra strong and extra reinforced and all that business. So we'll do that approach. It's probably not really necessary, but I don't want to ruin anything. And it would probably help, the stronger this is, the better. Down it goes, squish it together, get rid of that glue. Right now I am pushing the pieces together and into the ruler. So the ruler is my guide for this. Now, when I do the other piece, that's not going to work since this part is going to be, the two pieces go together and make a straight line. The back end is not. So that is going to be, well, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because I'm not going to be able to do this approach. I also want to do the little bit first. Doesn't really matter, I suppose, but this is the easier one to do, and I'd like to get it all taken care of so that I can remove the ruler and do the harder bit first. By the way, I didn't take the time to sand out the root edge that's going to go into the fin, but since I'm thinking about it right now, I really should sand this part right here where it's going to attach to the big part of the fin. Now, I didn't do that for this bit, but it also didn't have a burr in it. This did, so yeah. There we go. All right, this is probably pretty well set. I mean, it's not going to be completely rigid. It will sag if given the opportunity, but that looks pretty good. Again, the ruler is not going to help with this next bit, so I'm just going to get that out of the way. So it's going to connect just like this, and again, this is not 180-degree angle here. It's not flat. It is slightly curved. So So that'll be fun. I'm going to use the notch here. This by the way is, oops, that one hasn't been glued yet. This one, the engine pod here is going to fit in like this. So I need to be very careful to make sure that this gap is accurate, that the match is perfect, and that I don't get a lot of glue in there, because otherwise it's going to close off the hole that I'm going to use to attach the pods. Since we spent all that time on the pods, it'd be a real pain if they're not attached right. So anyway, make sure everything's lined up. And then the glue. And again, I'm going to do the two applications of glue here, and I'm going to make sure I'm spreading it away from that hole. I really don't want any glue getting in there. I mean, I could definitely clean this up with the hobby knife if I need to, make it a little bit bigger, but I really don't want to do that, because one thing I will say for the Estes kits that involve these kind of like jigsaw builds is that the pieces usually fit together very well. You usually don't have to fool around with them in order to get a good fit. So that's good. It means that all the laser cutting is accurate, but it also means that you don't want to do anything to mess with the accuracy of those initial cuts. All right, again, spreading glue away from that hole, not toward it. I probably have too much glue here, but we'll see how it goes. And it's going to squirt out. Hopefully just not toward the hole as much. All right, so I'm going to bring these pieces together. Make sure that I'm going to use that hole as the guide. Yes, I got this excess glue. I'm going to push it away from the hole, not toward the hole. Now, again, when I did this first piece, I was pushing down and toward the hole. Now I just need to be pushing them toward each other, which is about as good as it's going to get, unfortunately. I seem to be pushing a little bit more glue out, even though I thought I had wiped it all up. And I can see there is a tiniest little bead of glue in that hole right now, but there's not much I can do about that at the moment. Once I feel confident that the glue is somewhat tacky, I can probably fish that out, try to clean it up with a very narrow dowel, maybe with my fingertip, my fingernail. Yeah, I can probably do that now, actually. Let's try that. Yeah, it's all right. The other thing is, so I had this was the stuff that I was using to build the angled joints in this. This is excess. I could probably use that. That's good. That should be pretty good. Now, it's also worth noting that these holes, there is a little bit of leeway, because like this one had a burr in it, and I can't possibly sand in there. I don't know how I would. So it's not going to be perfect, but whatever. Okay. That should probably be pretty good, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to peel it off the wax paper, because even though it's wax paper, I mean, the glue does stick to it a little bit. I'm going to leave this to dry. Now, in order to get it to dry well, first of all, I'm going to not put it in the glue. I want it all on the wax paper. I'm going to put the ruler on top of it. And then I'm going to put some heavy stuff. Like, here's some talcum powder. That's great. I'm going to put it right on top of the joint, because I want this joint to be flat. That's like my number one concern right now. I do not want the fin or the wing to like be bent in different angles. So I'm going to use some weight. I'm going to put some weight over on the other joint as well, which is like here. And that's, well, it's going to have to sit. Yes, I have not built the other fin yet, but under normal circumstances, it wouldn't be too big a deal, because even when you construct complicated fins, they're usually not this big. But this one, I mean, it's long. It's going to be basically the whole length of the body tube, or at least close to it. So it is quite a long tube, or long fin. So I'm going to let this sit. I'm going to let it dry for like an hour or so, and then I'm going to build the other one. So in the intervening time, I have a little bit more trimming to do on this. I have a couple pieces to glue onto it, which you've already seen here. This is done. That can go away. Build the other fin, and then we're going to do the last major bit of construction, which is the engine, the motor mount, which is not as easy as indicated as you would think. There's a new technique that I haven't demonstrated in a film yet, and it's going to involve making a transition section. So that'll be fun. We'll see you for that part soon.